Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Wild Arrow Outdoors podcast. Pretty excited about this episode. On us with Pro Archer Doug Kyle, we have Pro Archer Tim the Hammer Gillingham. So, Tim, how you doing today?
I'm not too bad.
Thanks for taking your time out and jumping on with us.
Yeah, anytime, man.
So, Doug had reached out to you and asked you to jump on with us, and you were gracious to do so. So, we do appreciate that. So, let's just get right into it. So, let's just talk about how your 2025 season's going. Would you had a second place finish in Vegas? Is that correct?
Yeah, I won Lancaster, second in Vegas, and I just refer to indoor money as bonus money. I'm not hardwired for that. Lancaster format's a little easier on me. Just once we get into the shoot off, I manage those matches a little bit better mentally. But if you've noticed, there are certain people that are wired for indoor and certain people that are not, and that type of personality, I find it very difficult to take anybody that's a type A person and turn them into a phenomenal indoor shooter. It's just honestly, after all these years, it'd take a heck of a shrink to be able to do it. You know? And most people, honestly, if you are a type A, you'd be better off spending the majority of your time in mental training. And I personally think hypnotherapy, if you mastered that, I think you would be mastered the art of self hypnosis, you would have a decent chance. I mean, I worked a little bit with some of that stuff, and I don't know. It's just absolute pure misery to me. It is. That's not fun at all to me. It's not. It's so stressful. It's not. I cannot enjoy it.
Well, that brings up the question then. Since you finished second there in Vegas, and might I say you had a great Vegas performance. So now that you're a bona fide indoor shooter, how are you going to maintain that status in the indoor realm?
Not. I'm going to go home. I go to try to win every tournament I go to. I don't care what it is. I mean, I'll prepare as well as I can, but I am not about to destroy my body, especially at the age of 56. I'm not going to go shoot 6 rounds a freaking day to try to win something that I don't even hold in very high esteem, really. So, I'll participate and I'll do the best of my ability, and I'll work on the things that I think give me the best chance. Because even if I would have shot a 900, I would have felt like it was horrible archery. I mean, it wasn't good archery. It doesn't breed good archery. That kind of stress does not breed good archery. So you have to kind of change your approach on it and deal with managing the stress more than anything. Because it doesn't. Let's face it. How much technical skill does it take to hit a 10? Even an X, not even that hard.
Yeah.
Most guys can. I know guys that have learned it, and I shot with a guy last weekend out in California, and he shot a 900 in Vegas. Do you know how many years he's been shooting?
This is the first year.
2.
Yeah.
Wired for it. There's no emotion. That type B personality can't be taught, and maybe it can to a certain degree. But type A guys, it's like when you have what I call predetermined outcomes. Redding's example of it now. You already know the score. I mean, in senior pro, it's a little different. It could be anywhere from 6 to even 12 down. In open pro, it's 1 or 2 down the whole weekend. So the whole time you're out there, your mindset is, and you can't stay. It's hard to stay away from it. It's just trying not to miss. It's like, so you got 140 shots that you're just trying not to miss. Whereas on the flip side of that, we shot this tournament Break the Barriers, where they had a little orange dot in the center of the normal 12 ring. Very difficult. You were trying to hit something. When you go to ASA, you're trying to hit something. Yeah. And because there's no guarantee that it's, 90% of the crew is going to hit the highest scoring value. And I think a lot of target archery has gone to that, and it's miserable. It's not fun. When we started scoring the X in field, it made the game. It used to be, it came down to the animal round because, some of these people that run these events they baffle me on their ignorance of everything. We used to shoot field and give guy a mulligan, for Christ's sake. It's a national championship, and let the guy throw away his best score. And then they even went as far as, if you can go for 4 days, you get a mulligan, but if you can only come for 2, you got to keep those scores. I mean, this is a national championship. Are you kidding me? It's just because people are so, like, they don't want to give up the nostalgia of previous archery. Well, when I started archery, it was hard to shoot a 560. Okay. Now it's just not hard at all. It's par. And so now you got every single arrow in a field round means the same as the next one. Everything has the same value. It's a much better round. And I don't understand why people can't see that and make the rest of our archery that way.
Yeah. So you think it's taken away from the archery?
Yeah, well, it's fun for people as they're getting good in it, indoor and stuff like that. It's fine for people, but the game has to be built for the top athletes and handicapped on down. That's why they build golf the way it is and put a shorter stake in. You and I we go shoot a 69 from the white stakes. We're going to think we're pretty good, but they're going to laugh at us, and so that I like distance as a handicap. I really do. I think it's a good way of a handicap in archery, frankly.
Yeah.
I'd like to see the formation back out. I think it'd be a phenomenal round. V formation is an incredible round shot from 20 to 65 yards, just out on a soccer field. So it'd be a great intramural round. I don't know have you guys ever shot a V formation?
I have not.
Didn't we shoot that at Yankton
years back? No. What they do is they put targets out in a V like this. So they're 20, 25, 30, and they use a 42 centimeter. The last we did, we used a 42 centimeter.
Oh, okay.
And then you'd use the next size up for the next 3 yardages, and then you use for the next 4, you'd use the next size up target. And very challenging round. You get any wind up, boy, it's tough. And I like the idea, and I'm just pitching the idea to NFA, to the pro director, to change that Dakota Classic in Yankton to that event. It's an old NFA event. I remember shooting it back when Terry Ragsdale guys were around, and we shot it with field targets. And it would be a very interesting way to do it, where you could actually shrink the target size for the pros, like down 1 for the distance. Oh, yeah. And so you could shoot the birdie target out to 30, which would be very challenging. But that to me is a pro level type of shot, so it'd be very interesting to see some changes, but nostalgia is hard to change because your directors that make those decisions are a lot of them are in their position by default because nobody wants the job, and they're not overly creative, and it's a not-for-profit situation, right? So when you're doing stuff for profit, you do it differently than not-for-profit.
Well, yeah, and you think they're just they get stagnant and they don't accept new ideas and want to change.
We need an archery doge.
Right. Yep. Yep. They could be very well put in place.
That could be the villain.
Right. So then, let's see here. You've done quite well so far in our ASA.
Last ASA, don't tell me how. I have no idea. I had nothing. I mean, honestly, I'm in a new bow year. And new bows, guys can think we're as good as we can, but new bows, it's really easy to get a bow good. It's very difficult to get a bow great. When I say great, I mean the difference between sometimes it's the difference between a 1/16 of an inch on a D loop. Sometimes it's the difference between 1 or 2 pounds of holding weight. Sometimes it's the difference between a quarter twist on a cam with one cam hitting in front of the other. Sometimes it's 1 or 2 ounces on a stabilizer, and that makes the game, it just makes that setup, one of the best phrases, I just heard it again lately, and I just kind of remembered it was, amateurs practice till they get it, pros practice till they can't get it wrong. And and that's the difference. The pros have the top pros, especially. There's a lot of guys in pros that you know are there hoping to win. The guys that go there knowing they're going to win, you can guarantee they put the work in. And I was putting the work in, but man, I just couldn't get this set up. And I was shooting the quad bars when I started. I went out there, and I was fairly stressed because I had 20 minutes to go before we started, and I stopped at the dang 3D practice range because I still wasn't sure where I was hitting. Then I go out there and shoot the highest score I've ever shot as a senior pro.
Yeah.
I just got on a roll mentally, and I think a lot of times some of my best rounds will come from that. And I went out there with the mindset that I've got what I've got to deal with, and I need to just stay in the game and go work on it later. And, just try to get 16 up or better. And, if you think about it, Rash, shouldn't be that hard. And I got on a roll, and I just hit them. And then the second day, dry fired a knock like 8 arrows before I went out for the day. And of course, we were shooting in the dark, practicing. My first 3 arrows hit like that low, and I'm like, I don't even know. Finally, I just took equipment failure. Man, I struggled that day. Holy cow, I struggled I couldn't get anything going.
Yeah.
I come home, I made some adjustments, and in fact, I shot a tournament out in California last week in the Break the Barriers. Tried an 80% mod because everybody says it's the greatest thing in the world, right? Jimmy Letch shoots it. In fact, that kid that I shot with out there that shot 900 in Vegas, you know what he's shooting for holding weight? It's just
9 pounds.
Yeah, exactly. I don't understand how some of these guys can shoot some of these setups, but they do. And he's not a short guy. He was probably 6'1", so it's just and he shot a weird shot style too. He was an Italian guy, and I don't even know what he was using. He was using like a stand, and he was shooting it set up to where he could I think it was someone that had like a safety click, and he had taken it out where he could like relax off of it.
Yep. Like a release trigger.
He signed up as amateur, and he would have won this Open Pro.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So he had all the out in that tournament. It's kind of cool. They have mulligans. So the amateurs.
I did not know.
Yeah. So if 2 amateurs went together, like him and his partner, they had eight mulligans.
Can we get mulligans? We'd buy mulligans, wouldn't we?
Yeah, it's pretty hard. It'd be pretty hard for two pros to team up and win that with that kind of, because it's not just sandbagging amateurs.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned that style of release, because I've actually got one that I've set up as a release trigger, and you keep the pressure on it, and then you just slowly relax off of it, and
but
it goes off.
Can you feel the trigger move?
No, you cannot.
What release is that?
It's one of my stands that I've taken everything out of and reversed it, and
so what you really
it's not something I would recommend. I'm just saying that, and I got the idea because in the shotgun shooting world,
sure,
they have a release trigger for and it serves a purpose. And I kind of thought maybe I could adapt that into my archery stuff, and I would not.
They have them here too.
I would not recommend it. What's that?
Spot Hogg made a Cascade years ago.
Oh yeah,
Sergio Pagni, that's his favorite release in the world.
Oh yeah.
But talk about cool as a cucumber, guys. Type B personality. That guy's poster child, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm probably A plus personality. I think you and I are probably
really similar. We wear emotions on our shirt sleeves, like her.
Yes. But it is what it is.
I have an archery mood. I'll get over it pretty quick. Just, I got to be pissed at myself.
Yeah, it's just it. Yeah, we get, we wear our emotions on our sleeve, and it would sometimes just roll right out. But in 5 minutes, we're getting dope and doing something different.
Yeah, my wife hates it. I always admired guys like Randy Omer. Just they could be so low key all the time. Roger Hoyle, I remember one. I shot the first summer games we ever shot here in Utah. This guy had the world record FIDA, right?
Mm-hmm.
He shoots a freaking 6, and I don't see a bit of emotion in his body. I'm like, what is wrong with this guy? I'd be so angry. But then, he broke the record at Reading one year in the worst weather we've ever shot in. I don't even know how anybody could shoot that good. I couldn't even feel my fingers. It was blowing
Oh,
snow, ice sideways, and none of us
oh,
had clothes for it. I was
mm,
hypothermic by the time I got done with that tournament. And he breaks the
I
record.
can believe. Yeah, I know that the first time I went to Reading, I was like, "Oh, we're going to California. It's going to be nice." And I packed warm weather clothes. And when I got out there, I was looking for a store I could buy a long underwear in. I'm
That
like,
sounds
"This
like
is crazy."
Foley.
Yeah.
Wait, Foley was this year, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Foley was horrible.
That tournament taught me never to bring crappy rain gear to a tournament ever. Buy some good Helly Hansen or something, because I had the Walmart special and I froze.
Oh yeah. No, I usually have my Kuiu rain gear with me, but
Yeah.
And it works good.
And this is kind of a good thing for your viewers. When you buy rain gear, make sure you can stretch into it. Make sure when you put that jacket on that you can stretch into it. And that's going to be my next product. It's being built right now. I'm going to build a line of arm guards because I don't like any of the arm guards on the market. Most of the stuff that I build is stuff that I want because you can't find it. So we'll start with that stuff that I want, and then I'll teach you why I want it. I've told that a couple people I'm building an arm guard. They're like, arm guard? Who wears an arm guard? And
you need to when you got that stuff on.
I'll give you a quick story. So, you guys know Pedro Amparo?
I do not.
Pedro Amparo is a Spanish bow hunter, and he's got some really cool stuff on YouTube. So if any of your viewers, want to go look him up on YouTube, he's just got some unbelievable cinematography. I mean, this guy goes all out when it comes to filming these ibex hunts, and he goes to Marco Polos and stuff like that. And he must have some serious backing. I'm pretty sure I heard him say the other day he worked for Kuiu, which I don't know what regard. I sent him some stabilizers and he shoots them. So
yeah,
a level of sponsorship, but he's a guy I would really like to get on board with Gold Tip. But he calls me. He's like, because he knows I'm kind of the guru on cuts and stuff. He missed I don't know, one of those big sheep, Argalis or a Marco. Oh. I don't know which one it was, but an expensive one. Let's put it that way. It was a long shot. It was over 100 yards, 37 degrees, and we ran through all his stuff. And, I come up with about 3 or 4 things that he probably did wrong, like trust his field point accuracy, trust his rangefinder. Those types of shots really got to have some extra data. But when it really came down to it, I said, where'd you hit? He said, I hit low. Well, I said, all that stuff make you hit high. He said, well, I did hit my arm a little bit. I'm like, problem solved. How would you wear a puffy jacket or a rain gear without an arm guard? I mean, it's just idiocy. I mean,
yeah.
So, or why would you hunt period without them? So, but I think people know what I'm building. It's going to be a cool product.
Huh. Well, and speaking of products, talk about some of the stuff you're building and putting into production.
Well, it's just funny how, grips on bows is the first thing I started making. And I just ran into this guy over at a tournament in France, and David Lambert, and he has a little 3D printing booth. He always set a booth up there. He made all kinds of stuff 3D print, and he's like hit me up to help him build a Bowtech grip. So, over the last 4 or 5 years, we built all kinds of grips together. So, I like, on this, like you can probably see it here. So, Matthews puts a pretty rounded grip on these bows, and a lot of companies do. And I just don't like rounded grips at all. You want a nice flat grip for, to control that load transfer. That bow shifts like this when you're firing, and without a nice flat grip, it's hard to feel that angle, and that it'll rotate real fast. And in fact, I'll give you a little story. We were doing a video one time for Gold Tip and kind of trying to show people what happens with arrows that actually hold a memory. And so shooting a shooting machine inside of a building at 45 yards, and the first thing I do is I shoot 3 arrows into the same hole. You got to have a baseline. Every time you test, you have to have a baseline, right? Well, this LX shot this one arrow 3 times in a group that was like and a quarter inches wide. And I was like, and so I took the grip off, and because I get this spidey sense for stuff, and I put a shrewd grip on there, retuned it in the shooting machine, and went inside out in a dime. Now, if you put a woman's bow in a shooting machine, it won't repeat itself. If you put a bow in a shooting machine with grip tape, it won't repeat itself. So what makes you think you could do it in your hand that way and repeat yourself? So I always wear a glove. Right. I always let my hands slide in. Randy Ulmer said this stuff years ago. If you want to find the torque-free spot in your grip, you got to let it go where it's going to go. So he said, put lotion on your hands. Well, spandex gloves kind of a little bit better than having lotion all over your hands, right? A lot of people don't like that slipping feeling, but I like to build the grip to where, when I slip into it, it ain't going anywhere, right? It's going to slip to where it's going to go, but then you got to have the grip ergonomic or the surface area and stuff to hold it there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think I got into some poison oak last week.
Oh, you just keep that to yourself. So, speaking of the grips, I know. Tell what bows you actually make those grips for.
Well, I build these grips come in a kit too. So most of us don't have any idea, what angles we like, because we've always been forced into one handle, right?
Right.
You get what you get. And so these grips have, inserts that go inside the grip. And I guess probably wouldn't hurt to show somebody. I make them in all different colors, so like this is let me see if I can show you. This is like a 0, so you can see it on the back. And it goes all the way up to a 12. So and this just slides in. So these just slide in and pop down, and you have these 2 little set screws that hold it there. Got a nice shelf. It's just it's a real nice Matthews grip. So I make them I make this in a narrow and a wide version because I personally like wide. I got big hands, but even like Ace Coleman, he'll shoot the wide one. You get in behind that grip. Hoyt makes a very narrow grip. I make a few grips for Hoyt. I don't sell very many, but mainly just their target bows. I am working on trying to get one built for a hunting bow because everyone puts these cheap rubber grips on stuff, and I think the grip's your first connection to the bow, and it needs to be right.
Yeah.
Are
you going to make them for elite?
Nothing for elite. The elite riser is too wide, really. I mean, you could make one that double-sided taped on. There's some he builds for like PSEs that just double-side tape on. Start getting up an angle, that would probably need to be taped onto the riser, But there's unless you want a really wide grip. I've seen somebody made one. It was uglier than sin because you had to build all that real estate on the side and then taper it in, and it's just there's not a lot of real estate. The Bowtech build snap-in grips for all the Bowtechs, and of course Bowtech had to, between Gen 1 and Gen 2, had to change it by like 10,000 so they won't fit. So I got both of those. So and Paige shoots that grip in a minus, so she likes to flatten it out more, which she has double jointed wrists, and I guess that's why. But my daughter can reach her finger around and touch her arm with it. It's crazy, but and people are different. Everybody's different in what they want, what they like. I find it very hard to repeat my shot with a low risk grip. It feels good. I feel like I aim better. Same thing with grip tape. I feel like I aim better, but I do not feel like I can repeat the shot as well.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Yeah. But
we'll see here. You also make
one of the
lens associations.
Yeah, one of the cool things I make is one of the very first things, actually the very first thing that I made on a 3D printer, because I got a couple Bamboo X1s right here, is this black gold sights. A lot of guys hunt with these. They're good sights, But one thing I hated the most about them, they're just really stiff, and this knob just leaves a lot to be desired. And especially when you're out there hunting, you got a light pair of liners on or something. And so I built this big knob so you can just kind of grab it. You got gloves on, and you're looking at 40 or 50 yards in a turn. So it's, when you have the leverage over that, you can really get on your line perfectly. That being said, I don't really care for their little pot metal indicator pins. I hope they hear that. So when I shot it, I just built a block of aluminum there and scratched a line in it, and it was 10 times better. But a $450 sight, put a 30-cent freaking pot metal pin on it that can bend and ruin the sight. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
I also make these rings, these adjustment rings. So anybody's ever leveled these things, because they have two little slots there. When you level them, they're all tapered and they're hard to grab onto, and they're a pain in the royal butt. And while I did that, I put a bigger level on it too, so you can then offer it in 4 colors. So you can see that yellow with that blue really has a nice offsetting color.
Yeah.
And so I mean, just give people some options in that regard. So on the target side of stuff, I make scope rings. I always was painting up my scope rings to be able to see them, and now they got these cool things called 3D printers. We can build all kinds of stuff. Let me grab my little box here. So,
And for anybody listening to this, we will be putting this on YouTube so you can see all of Tim's toys.
Eventually I'll have a YouTube channel. We're working on it right now. I'm just getting the graphics done. But like, you have little scope rings that you put on, like this little ADS-31, and they'll work with a sunshade. You got your shrewds, 35s and 40s. So virtually any of the popular scopes on the market, I will have rings for. So in about 15 colors. So
Yeah.
And what that does is, I don't know if you guys seen Ace's podcast from last, or he's putting some little clips out. One of the things I talked about was the fact that one of the worst things you can do is hunt for your pin. So if you can't see your pin, or you're not peripherally seeing your housing. This is especially true when you're running big peeps. This is especially true for hunters. Like when I hunt, I run a giant peep because I want to circle this whole thing, and it lets a lot of light in, and low light you can actually see. So, but you have to be very cognizant of the fact that you want to see that peripherally so that you can see when it's off, because it's like just a little bit of off center and you're going to miss. So
yeah, it's critical to be lined up and everything.
Yeah, so your pins, like I find like spot hogs, or most of the hunting sites, the pins are too bright. So I come up with a way, like on this particular side, I would put duct tape over this housing, and then as it got lower, if I'm sitting in a tree stand, which I don't do much, but I would just peel that tape off as it got darker. Okay. And I would have those pins doctored up, so when I was out in the bright sunlight, they were as bright as I wanted them. Okay. With the tape on it. And then that give me that range. In tournament archery, we're allowed to shoot light packs, so we can adjust the light in to our pin the way we want. And LP lights, what you'll find is there's a ETAC light. They're pretty good. They're guys like them. They're pretty reliable. I have one, but what I find is I can't get it low enough for, like, when you're down in a canopy and stuff. It's just too bright. So I like the Schleit light, but I think it kind of has the opposite problem. It doesn't have enough on the high end. But then there's the LP light, which I think has the most range. There's 20 settings for brightness. It's got its own issues. It likes to drain batteries and stuff like that. But no, I buy the case on Amazon.
So, if I remember correctly, you're building a new limb attachment.
Yep. Yeah.
Correct.
Well,
Have you?
I was wearing my Hamsky shirt here. I was one of the original founders of Hamsky.
Right. I don't know if our viewers do that or not, but
Hamsky stands for Hammer, Skeeter, and Easy. So Hammer's my nickname, Skeeter is Andrew's nickname, and Sean, he's Easy. So
I did not know that.
That was kind of German, so it was kind of creative. And actually, when we did come up with that, it was pretty interesting. So
yeah.
So I mean, either one of those guys had actually even shot a limb-driven rest. When the point we started, we were on an elk hunting trip, and I kind of pitched the idea to him, and Sean was kind of semi-retired, so he had the opportunity to be able to do it. And Anders comes from an engineering background, so he was, that side of it. And then I was the ideas archery guy, right? But things morph, right? You come up with better ways. You get different clarity as you use things, and you see problems with things. And I'm a guy that is very solution oriented. If I got a problem, and I know, and I've shot 42 years, I know when things are right and when they're wrong. And of course, as you get older, you got to start factoring in age, and it's hard for me to do that. It's like I just don't know what to blame. But one of the problems I see, and initially I never had any problems, okay, myself personally, but because I would always build this pull cord on the rest as a bowstring, because it always made sense to me. You always got to have a spring, whether you run the spring on the limb clamp or here or up here. You have to have a spring and a limb driven rest, because otherwise the launcher will go down and it'll follow the limb flutter like this. Okay, so you guys, limb drivers, you need this. Okay. And a lot of those other companies can't use the spring because I think it's, I don't know if the spring in the system is, I think it's a Hamsky pad or whatever, but it's just, there's different things that they have, but there's better ways of doing things. And, this is just the very best way of doing it. Okay. I found that with the limb clamp, and I never really had a problem with that spring on the limb clamp. I ran the spring on the limb clamp and then I built a bowstring. And that allows you to pull this lever arm off, twist it up and down for strength. Now, the most important thing to teach, though, and the reason I haven't really got crazy about launching this yet, because it needs to come with education, okay? Because not everybody can run a limb clamp, especially if you got a lot of kids, watching this, girls, low poundage bows, they can't run limb clamps, okay? Because their limbs don't flex enough, okay? See, when you draw this bow back, you see that cord flex? You don't more than that. But if your cord doesn't flex enough, you're not letting the rest up. And then if it doesn't flex enough, it's going to drop too soon. So what we're looking for is we want that launcher to start down right about that midpoint of the shot. So that midpoint of travel. You don't want any further than that. Think of it this way. An arrow, as it goes down the string, grab one of these. So this arrow, as it's going down, being launched, is pressing down into the rest initially. And then, somewhere about right, 4, 5, 6 inches of travel, the cams start to gather the string and then the arrow flexes up. But I'm exaggerating this. And then it comes back down. Okay. So the point that arrow leaves the rest has done its job. Okay. It's only in the way from that point going back. And a lot of people initially were like with limb driven, they were trying to keep it up to the fletchings. That's a bad idea because you just hit it on the reverse paradox. QADs and cable-driven dropaways are highly unreliable in terms of if something were to change, like your cord length, that's going to change your impact point dramatically because that arrow's pressing downward. Okay, you have to drop it right away just to be able to get this out of the way. If you put that launcher on a Hamsky, it wouldn't get out of the way either. You're better off using like I use these AE launch pads because they fit the whole riser, and then my arrow just sits right in them. And then when I'm hunting, I'll take like felt, like just get some adhesive backed, foam, and I'll put it on the riser. So, so you want to be able to time that, and you want to take. And I've always been good at taking failure points out of my system. So, paid the price. Most of those lessons are learned because of failure. Okay, and so you want to look at things as to how can I eliminate failure points. Don't take chances, okay? Don't take chances on crappy equipment, okay? Don't take chances on crappy setups. I can't tell you how many times I've gone somewhere hoping, it makes it through and it doesn't, And so I just come up with this clamp system. This is for a title, and nothing was available for a title last year, so I built my own. I have a mill, and I showed it to Hamsky, and they just, I don't know, for whatever reason, didn't want to go with it. Didn't want to build a limb clamp. They don't want to teach the limb clamp. They want to teach tying it onto the limb. And I think that's personally an accident waiting to happen. You can't really tie it on now. Girls and kids, they at some point are going to have to tie it on. Okay. If you can go, clear these. Well, these limb brackets won't work on these, but the older Matthews, would. But I would still list like I did a couple girls down there at Foley, and I tied it on, but I went as far though as to buy this stuff from Hamsky, and I made the clamp or the tie down pad even twice as long because I want to move it around.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And if I'm going to tie somebody's stuff on, I would do it the way I want to do it, which is I don't want to move it. So I'll tie a little loop, and then I'll hook my bowstring in because I'll build these. These are just show you what I do here. My wife ties these up for me, but they're little bowstrings, with the spring in the middle. So I had all these springs made, and to put the spring in the middle, it you can't hurt it. That's if you did that with a rubber spring, your launcher's going to start creeping up. Okay, so it's not.
Yeah.
You just have to stretch those through really good, and I just think it's kind of crazy. If you look here on my hunting bow, this is a new Lift XD. The spring sits right in behind the quiver, right? Now this is wider, but you want it out of the way, and you can adjust where that spring is. So if I felt like that spring was hitting something, like I put a pad right there, which whatever. Move the spring down here. You could move it up here. You just have to build, your different link strings. And building a little bowstring, not everybody's able to do that. I mean, if somebody wants to call me and wants custom stuff, I told Mama that's her bonus. So.
That's her Christmas bonus.
But if you look here, so on this side, I've got this. This is my favorite style of connection point. Now you can use that, or you can use the one that has a spring on it. But if you use the one with the spring on it, then I have a little kit that has a shoulder bolt into the side of it. But I just bought about 500 of these from them, or a couple hundred of these. They were more money than that, but so I bought these to carry because I want to give people the option, because this just loops inside of us. That string will go in there and you just pull it inside of itself. Now I have no connection points. It's looped in here, and looped in here. There's nothing to come loose. So then I just can pop it off and twist the link so it's bulletproof. I snagged that on the brush, it ain't going to matter. But it's back in behind my quiver on, and it's never going to get snagged.
Yeah. Now, do you find that there's a happy medium place for that spring to go as far as distance from the limb, from the riser? It's all the same.
It's a really short spring,
right?
so it's not going to make a bunch of noise and stuff. And Joel, I gave one to Joel. He's like, well, if you put that up in the middle, it's going to be flopping around making all kinds of noise. I said, no, it's not a big spring. He was thinking it was a big old spring.
Oh, yeah.
But you could put it down the bottom. You could put it anywhere you wanted to, really, if you're handy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably something you probably see a lot of is people working on their equipment that shouldn't be working on their equipment.
Working on their bows.
Right.
I borrowed a guy's backup though one time because I had a problem with mine. I was just like, "Are you kidding me, dude?" I mean, and put
scary
so poorly. So,
yeah.
But this,
awesome.
let me just show you real quick. So the clamps are three different ones. So there's one that's specific to the title, and this comes with this eyeball because that string will pivot here, and this you want that 90 this way on it, so that doesn't so it rotates good on that. I might make that later on, but I got 10,000 of these to get rid of first, so we might machine that in later or a little. It just adds cost to it, and this is just bulletproof.
Yeah.
You run skateboard tape on the limbs, and the kits I sell come with.
So you say
this is
that is specific to a title?
This fits a title, so
it won't fit other.
If you look at it real close.
It will not fit.
See how it's
okay, so it's shaped exactly like the limb.
Yeah, so it's notched out for that little that rubber. Now the 1-inch one is what's going to fit the majority of the bows in the market, right? But it's notched out for the lift. Okay, it'll work with all your elites and all your Hoyts and PSE, all your 1-inch limb Dartons, all those. So, and then there's still, I got a few. I think I ordered 250 of these or so for 3/4. There's still some 3/4 inch ones floating around, but I didn't want to get too heavily stocked up in those. But if I'm at a tournament, I usually carry some of the different cord links. I had my wife make me a bunch of different cord links. So if somebody wants me to put it on, it only takes me about 5 minutes if I have all the stuff. And it really doesn't change much unless the person had his rest timing way off, which I see stuff. This is one of the things that made me do this is I go down to the tournament, I look down the line and I would see all these. I just look at how much flex is in people's cords, right? And I'm thinking, it's just nobody's been teaching how to do this. So, like I said, I've got a new website, YouTube channel going to be called I Can Archery, with the premise of teaching you, empowering you how to do your own stuff and not be afraid of it. And, I envision big things for it eventually, but only so much time in the day too. So bear with me.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I just want to say is, if you have a question and you're at a tournament or you see Tim anywhere, really,
people face it all the time.
He's one of the few people that will actually, take the time to visit with you. I know that when I started shooting, I didn't know Tim from Adam at that time, and he's been very helpful with me and has always answered my question, no matter how ridiculous it may seem or be. He's always taken the time, and he's become a great friend and mentor to me. So I really appreciate you for that, Tim. And
the golden rule is the most life's problem. You just treat people the way you want to be treated. And I put posts out, or messages out to people, and really sincerely wanted to answer to a question, and nobody would take the time of day. And how hard is it for them to actually, answer? It gets a little crazy sometimes, but that's why whenever I get questions, I make a video.
So, and that's great, and that's one thing I wanted to say too is, Tim has lots of videos on YouTube covering all kinds of aspects in archery. It's out there. Look up his YouTube page.
My goal with this YouTube channel is to really shoot the videos on YouTube, launch them, and then store them in a library to where where to go for them. But then also fill in the gap. I'm going to fill in the gap. If I show you how to do something, I want to give you guys a link to where to get it so you don't get lost in the fray. I know I was buying this 360 camera, and I don't know nothing about that stuff. Frankly, never used it, but I have lots of great ideas sometimes. But I just, I'm sitting here watching this video, this guy's showing how to do all this stuff. And I was thankful that he gave me the links to go buy, the mic and all the different stuff that, he told you to buy with it, because otherwise, you go over to Amazon and just buy all the wrong crap, or, it does. And it's just, my goal is to kind of give you, good, better, best. This is what I like. In a perfect world, I wouldn't be sponsored at all. And I eventually just be objectively just say, hey, I think this is a great site. This is number one in this category, 2, 3, 4, 5, choose,
Yeah.
A lot of people I've been sitting here, this whole, all these fads that run around archery, like single pin sights. I'm running around my brother's the day after the tournament last weekend, chasing turkeys with my target bow with a single pin sight. And I was ready to, I'm thinking, why do people like single pin sights? It's the stupidest thing in the freaking world. You're stalking turkeys, and then of course they pop up 10 yards from where you had your sight set, and you're like, you don't know turkey, right?
Right.
But,
yeah. Well, so I know how much time I put into my practice and routines, and you've been at the top of the game for years. I mean, a century longer. I'm not. I'm not. Well, I'm not trying. Well,
That's
I didn't mean
100
to call you
years.
old, but
I'm older than Tim is, so be careful.
but I mean, you've been there a long
Won
time,
my
a
first pro
decade. We'll just
tournament
say a
in
decade.
04, I believe it was.
Oh, 04. So 2004. So
It's 2
how
decades.
much time and 2 decades? How much time and effort do you still put into, what does it take to still maintain
It doesn't
that
take
top
as
level
much
performance?
because I know what to practice now. I focus more on my equipment than anything. The only thing I really spend a lot of time with is unknown yardage. One of the reasons I hate unknown yardage is because it takes so much time. Well, it's just,
Yeah.
the game's fair. I enjoy the game, but it just takes a lot of time to be competitive. And, the best thing I ever did is build my shop, right outside the gate here. So I walk
Oh, yeah.
out the garage and into my shop. And so I've got a 20-yard indoor range pro shop, machine shop. Well, I don't really consider myself a machinist yet. I just have machine tools. I would probably make a few machines cringe, but
Yeah. Well, do you think though that the rangefinder, the invention of the rangefinder, or the allowed usage of the rangefinder, do you feel it took away from the archery
Not all.
game, or do you feel that it
as it just back to
added
freaking
the
yardage up?
archery game?
Okay. The lowest hanging fruit in archery is
Yeah.
an unknown yardage. You want to make money in archery? Learn to shoot unknown. There's less competition. And those guys might not like me saying it, but it's true.
Yeah.
And I knew years ago if I wanted to make any money at archery, I'd had to shoot unknown. So, but it was hard because until I got this place here in 2005, I didn't have any place to practice. There are no 3D ranges in the Western United States. Okay, you own it or you don't have it. And I worked for the railroad and I'd pack targets around. I'd try to go out and judge after working 12 hours, and you just can't do it, man. You go out and you make these big errors, and honestly, it didn't take as much as I thought it would take, judging wise, practice wise. Once I got the facility, and I just have a big open field in the back, and I just put them in a circle, and I just judge short, medium, long, short, medium, long, short, medium, long, and I'll go out and shoot. I'll try to shoot 20 targets. I'll be lucky if I do it 3 or 4 times a week. When I worked at home, I'd do it a lot more, but it's not true.
Yeah, I know that. Well, especially this year, I haven't got to practice very much here at home. Our weather has been very poopy here, to say the least. At home, I mean, it's blowing 30 mile an hour today. Again,
it's beautiful.
We just can't get rid of it.
We had snow this morning, and the sun is shining. It's all gone. It's about time to go start my air rifle, right?
So, yep. So, I kind of think that the rangefinder did open up the growth of the sport, just allowing people that didn't want to put the time into judging yardages and
lowers
stuff,
the barrier
allowed
to
kids
entry.
to get involved and stuff.
That's what it does. It lowers the barrier to entry. It's archery, okay? What makes the ASA game is the low 12, okay? That's what makes the game. It puts risk and reward and extreme accuracy into archery, which is what it all needs, okay? It needs, OPA was the best game ever put in the sport. It was phenomenal. I mean, I think they maybe even went a little bit too hard and too long with it, because when you have a 14 ring into play, you need to have enough targets in 14 range that everybody has to incorporate it in their game. Now, I don't think 14s are good ideas with 4-man groups, because you're not, it's not really fair. I think the way the ASA does it, by adding the 14 and the shoot-offs, is kind of a cool way of doing it. You can make that tournament plenty hard with high and low 12s. You're backing the distance up, or putting terrain in. Some places there aren't terrain, just like golf courses. There's tough golf courses, and there's easier golf courses, but the distance is what will make it tough. And you'll see in that with the known pros right now. When they backed it up to 60 yards, some of the guys are not there anymore. And it brings the ego into full force. You have to learn to manage that too. You have to learn to manage the risk. And there's a difference, man, when you got an average of, say, 43 versus 53. I mean,
Yeah. So how disappointed were you that our class didn't go to the 60 yard? I know I was disappointed. I was really looking forward to it. So
when they let me tell you the difference. Some might not like me for saying this, but the senior pro class is a majority of amateurs that went into senior pro. Okay, they never shot pro. Okay, and it's different in the pro class. Women are the same way. A lot of the women in the women's known pro were never pros per se. And so they get intimidated by Paige or some of the better shooters, but they don't understand is you just got to put more ways to fail in the system. And some of these guys come into 3D thinking, well, I can't see it. It's too far. Well, do you really think you can see everyone? Wait till we go to Kentucky. You go shoot IPO, you can't see any of them, It's just like, that's part of 3D, in my opinion, is learning to shoot a target precisely. It's like I explained in the shot of the week last time with how you segment an animal off and how you learn to, how to aim on them, and shoot them. I mean, there's ways. I mean, sometimes if you can't see nothing, I mean, I saw some of them deer at the white crease and added 3 yards. It's dangerous. I find it's a little dangerous because your mind kind of turns subconscious a little bit, like when you're shooting a recurve. Like, you really have to focus on that point and stay there, otherwise you can make yourself hit low, because you're or make yourself hit high because your brain wants to go up to where it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Well, what about the newest, hottest topic about compounds being in the Olympics?
Who cares? I mean, it doesn't. The problem I have with World Cup and all that Olympic stuff, it's for an entitled few. Okay. It doesn't fit the average guy. I got into archery. The reason I liked archery so well is I came from team sports where it was very political. And in archery, I got out of it what I put into it. Okay? You can be the best shooter in a lot of these countries and not make their Olympic team if they don't like you. And
do you think, though?
Like we were joking with Jake and Brady. It's like, what do you get in the United States for winning a gold medal? What do you get? Pair of Nikes, $50,000.
Yeah.
Some countries they're set for life. Not in this country. It's just like, I give you an idea. For some parent to run a kid around the World Cup scene for a year is a minimum of $40,000. Okay, so it's
Well,
they don't reward you. There's no money to be made. There's zero money to be made. So at least in ASA, you win, you get $15,000, $20,000. These guys don't even try. They don't even try to get money into archery.
Yeah.
They don't even care about the fact of what it costs. And so, it'd be fine and dandy for archery if it's in the Olympics, but mixed teams, really? So you took an individual sport and you made it a team sport?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, but do you think, though, that it might inspire some youth, some real young kids to maybe have a dream to really get involved with archery? Do you think that might happen, or do you see it just being still the elite?
How many people shoot biathlon archery because it's in the Olympics, or biathlon rifle shooting because it's in the Olympics? How many people shoot? How many people shoot PRS?
Yeah.
Compared to that.
Yeah.
200-fold, 2,000-fold. Yeah. The point is it's not available, and it's an elitist niche to a certain degree. Doesn't mean you can't do it if you
Mm-hmm.
put your heart and soul into it. And if it means that much to you, knock yourself out. But to win an Olympic gold medal, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And
Yeah.
some countries, a lot of countries, see these people only get to travel if their sports federations pay for it. Okay. It's not realistic to travel from overseas to shoot ASA. There's not enough money in the sport. So if you want to change the sport, if you really want to change the sport of archery, you need to get money in it and create a professional sport out of it so that that professional sport will drive the college programs and the intramural programs and the introductory programs. But without the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, you don't have jack. And the Olympics is the pot of gold at the end of a rainbow.
Yeah.
There's
So how do we get the big money into archery?
First of all, you got to have leadership. Okay, leadership is everything. Okay, you have to have somebody with vision, somebody that's a very good leader that understands he needs to build a team, and that team's going to come from archers, media people, all these different aspects. That is going to make it socially acceptable. It's going to make it mainstream. It's going to get celebrities involved. The money will come when the advertising value's there. Well, we don't have anything. We want to still watch paint dry. We want to continue to do Vegas, which is the most boring thing in the freaking world, and call that the so-called Super Bowl of archery. It's not. It's boring. Okay. Olympic Air Rifle created, what they did for a boring game at 10 meters is pretty interesting. The way they score it closest to center. If you could do that in indoor archery, I think it would make it a lot more exciting. But it would also change too, because now you're trying to do something instead of trying not to do something. Just like when those guys went in the shoot off this year and they got switched to inside out, all of a sudden they were trying to do something. All of a sudden that par game went away. Now you have to be ultra precise.
Yeah, it wasn't par anymore.
It was almost too much, but it was a heck of a lot more fun to watch, wasn't it? So that's the thing you have to key towards. What's fun to watch, but what's still archery? I shot ESPN Great Outdoor Games. Might have been fun to watch, but sure as hell wasn't archery. Buckmasters might have been fun to watch, sure as hell wasn't archery. It was like Vegas on running 3D animals, almost. Because the pads are this big, you missed one, you're gone, So I don't know. There's ways of doing it. There's ways of doing it, but you can't give your soul up. And it's really leadership. The guy that bought our company, Tom Zelenovich, years ago, he would be perfect for it. Guarantee. I know the guy could do it.
Yeah,
he could turn this thing into a powerhouse. But you've got to have incentive there to do so. What's the incentive? What's the long-term plan? When they come out with OPA, did they really come out with a business plan as to where they were going to take it? How are you going to integrate it to the rest of archery? How are you going to fuel it? If it's the PGA of archery, how are you going to feed it? Okay. Because right now, the way archery is we shoot for manufacturer contingency money, and you can't thank anybody but Matthews for that. Matthews is the driving force behind that because nobody else would do it if it wasn't for them. And Matt McPherson has made that personal commitment because that's what grew his company. And without that, we really have nothing.
Right.
Yeah, I've heard some manufacturers say, well, we're going to wait and see what Matthews is paying so we know what we need to do. I've heard that, and when Matthews was developed and created, you got to kind of give it to the guy. He went out and got the best of the best.
If you want to look at it,
Matthews, and he put all his money into them guys.
They buy these companies up and they look at the sales and they say, okay, 85% is over here in hunting and 15% is in target archery. Why are we spending all this money in target archery? What they don't understand is we're still a pro shop driven sport. Okay, so boxers only want what's popular in the pro shops. They don't want to sell anything. They want to sell what sells. Okay, and what sells, and what sells is what's made popular at the pro shop level. And everybody that works in behind the counter pro shop pretty knows to a certain degree what's going on in the national circuits and who's doing what's hot on social.
Yeah,
and And that's what actually drives the sport. All the innovation in archery comes from tournament archery. It doesn't come from ours. The same thing, I'm shooting air rifles. All
Right.
100% of the innovation comes from tournament shooting. And it's the same ratio. It's a very small
Yeah.
microcosm of the sport, but it's a very technical, it's very technical expertise to a certain degree that most people aren't going to work on their own guns and so on and so forth, and um, all the innovation, all these things
Right.
that people want are coming from the demands of tournament grade accuracy. Minute a bird's easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, killing a deer,
Yeah.
these guys get all crazy,
Yeah.
and it's like killing a deer with a bow is the easiest thing I do with a bow. I'm trying to hit this. Okay. It's,
Oh yeah.
hunting
Yeah.
is more about having
Yeah.
the time and the money to do so, and, there's guys out there that are just beasts at what they do.
Yeah.
We got Sean Morgan out here. I mean, yeah, he might have the money and the time, but dude, he gets it done. Kyle,
Yeah.
Kyle Douglas, man. I mean, you're
Yep.
flip flop. That kid,
Yep.
dude, he has in 4 years has killed 3 monster muleys up here on the test run. And until you've hunted it, you don't understand what that means.
I know.
That's impressive.
I mean, he has killed some great muleys, and like you said, where he's going to get those
I
is
attribute
not
it to the fact that
the
he
average
moves like
guy.
a sloth. I'm not that way. I'm kind of. I probably move way too fast. That's why I had to learn to shoot far.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Hey Tim, got
Well,
another
Tim,
question for
I
you.
really
Now,
appreciate
I,
you.
I gotta
Oh,
pick his brain
Steve's got
on
one.
another subject here. So we
Uh-oh.
do have a lot of people that are new to the game or newer to the game of especially shooting 3D archery, and I've heard more than one person make a comment that the cool part about being a pro is pros never have problems or the pros never make mistakes. What would you say is a mistake that a lot of pros make that you just have to learn how to
Well,
overcome so it's not so
most of it
obvious?
is just mental. I mean, some of prep. Proper preparation puts you in a better mental state. But I go back to my very first arrow as a senior pro. Everybody had all these high expectations on me, and there was a pressure, man. It was a lot of pressure. It's like when you go to a local shoot, you feel more pressure a lot of times than you do a national shoot because everybody's like, "Oh, Tim Gillingham," and it's like you're putting all that pressure on yourself, and and I used to get more nervous in the first couple matches of a FITA, in the OR. I was thinking just because I didn't try not to be that guy, But I shot a 5. I have a 5 on my first arrow as a senior pro. Oh, it was devastating. And I just switched releases, so I'm just like torn in between going back, and I stuck with it, refocused, and shot 13 12s out of the last 19. One of the highest scores I ever shot. Unknown.
Yeah.
And so you just
That's
gotta
impressive.
tenacity. You never give up. You never give up. I look at it. If I'm down, my wife's like, "You're not even on the leaderboard." I said, "Don't worry about it." And I got 26 targets to get there, and that's the way I look at it. I got 26 targets. And when I get to the last 6, I got 14 rings. So all I got to do is get in the match, and I got a chance. I mean, one of the best wins of my tournament career, I beat Levi. We were first target in the shoot off. I was down 10 back. And I shot 3. I believe I shot 3 14s in that 12, and he shot a couple 8s or something to that degree. I mean, it was just one of them days, but you just can't give up. Number one, you cannot give up. And you just got to figure out it. That's what I love about 3D. You just got to figure out a game plan, right? So, for example, with first year they came out with 14s. I didn't know what to think. I can't remember if I don't remember what I did is I came up with a game plan because I thought I don't want to get nervous when I go for a 14. So I said, I'm going to shoot. I have a throwaway score. I'm going to shoot at every single 14 under 37 yards. Well, guys came by the group the first day, We were at target 15, and they're like, "How's Gillingham doing?" And I was like 46 up. It was stupid. And they're like, "Yeah, whatever." And but I ended up shooting like 2 8s and a 5 at the end, dropped my score a little bit, um, but that's the game you had to learn to manage. You had to look at it from a number standpoint. Is okay. So if I go for shoot at every target under 37, and I go for and let's say 12 of them are under 37 yards, or let's just say 10, and I hit half of them, that's 20 up. If I hit 8s on the other half, that's 10 down. So I'm a 10 up worst case scenario, right? As long as I don't shoot any 5s. But the upside potential of that is if I hit 3/4 of them, now I got a really good chance of crushing it. So, and then if I really screwed up day 1, then I could go into day 2 and just up the ante a little bit. So I would just like, okay, now I'm going to go for everything 41 and in. But I'm not going to ever just sit back. I see so many guys just sit back and take second place. If there's any avenue for me to win, I'm going for it. And what was funny about that first ASA, I won that tournament with a 14 on the final arrow. Everybody had to go back the second day, rechange their game plan, and come back after it. So you just can't give up. It's harder in like indoor and stuff because you miss one, you're gone. And there ain't no coming back. It's miserable. It's like telling a golfer if he misses a 3-foot putt on Thursday, he's got to play all weekend, but there's no way he can win. It's retarded. I hate it.
I always laugh and say the 3D targets are not hard to hit.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's so much focus. I think one of the things about 3D that you have to understand is that you got to stop trying to hit the 12. You got to start trying to hit the inside 2/3 of the 12. Okay. You've got to start setting your sight to hit the top of the 12. Like I put an 80% mod in my bow for this, like the barrier shoot. And I don't know. I just kept sitting low on everything. It's just too much drop in it. And I was just sitting low. So finally the second day I was like, screw this. I'm setting my sight wherever I think I'm going to hit the top of the dot with. So I revamped my strategy. I shot a lot better. I still shot a pile of them in the bottom of the dot because that was just tendency, and I learned to identify that tendency and then work at my average. Where am I going to miss if I miss? And that's a big thing about ASA 3D is that you have to learn how to miss right. So I shoot majority uppers because I know if I make a bad shot, it's going to be low. If I shoot a lower, I'll add a little bit more to it for that reason. Because psychologically, I shot 1-8 on that 28 up run. Because guys put an arrow across the upper 12. And I shot it a lower on a 47-yard coyote. And I think I missed it because psychologically I was thinking about it. You really got to, you have negative thoughts. You really got to get rid of them. You got to revamp. You got to run that program. Visualize yourself doing it. Because if you can't visualize yourself doing it, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, how often do you hear somebody say, I shot my bow really great,
there's no place
really
on
great there, but
for
just
looks.
didn't score good?
It's the most baffling thing to me that guys will spend their entire career shooting a surprise shot because it makes them feel good. Then they will trying to figure out a way to win. Okay. And I'll give you an example of that. I was that guy.
Oh, yeah.
For 12 years, I went back and forth. And I had a buddy up in John Bamberg in Alaska. And it was always indoor that caused this stuff. It always was. And he could stand there and, this is in 1994, 95, 96. This guy kind of made me question a lot of things, too, because he shot a 38-pound Browning 6T6 with a 26-13 and 110 grain nib, 26 inches long. And he never missed. With a gator jaw. You know what that is? Yeah, gator jaw was a double caliper. So before loops, we had 2 knock sets, and you had a caliper top and bottom. And he'd sit there and lob 60Xs every freaking time. And he couldn't beat me outdoors, but indoors I could never beat him. But again, that's just my own like personality and his personality. So, but
Yeah.
I always remember telling him that gonna have to learn to shoot back tension. It's the only way. He's like, boot, whatever. He was a puncher, and he was poo pooing it. He came from Louisiana, where the roots of 3D, where when they used to put lipstick on their arrows, to different colors to see where they hit, because they just 400 foot a second, they were blowing through everything. They were shooting 100-pound bows. And, if you could see who could last the longest without their bow blowing up and stupid stuff like that. But I just remember being that torn. I was always go to a tournament and I'd get jangled, couldn't put the pin in the middle. I'd come back and I'd revamp and I'd shoot a surprise shot. And when I moved down to Utah in 1997, I said, okay, I'm giving it 2 years. 2 years. I'm giving it an effort. For 2 years, I'm going to shoot nothing but a surprise shot. And I tried everything. Pinky fingers, back tensions, rubber bands. I don't care what I tried. You know how many 300s I shot in 2 years? Now, in 96 or 97, right before I moved, I shot a month and a half straight without missing a 10 ring. Punching. Shooting. Actually, I was shooting a Carter whole thing. You know how many 300s I shot in 2 years?
Oh, yeah.
2.
0?
I was done.
Oh, 2.
I was absolutely done. And at that point, I decided that I'm going to do it my way. I win everything at a local regional level. And the only reason I can't do it at a national level is between my ears. And it was just kind of preparation meeting opportunity. I went to work for Gold Tip in 2002 or 3. I can't remember. It was 2002, actually. Because my wife and I got, maybe it was 3. I don't remember. I think I came down here in 97. Yeah, it must have been 03. And a couple years later, when I first started to be able to travel and put a booth up and stuff and got a little more opportunity, I was ready. And I won my first pro tournament in Myrtle Beach. And honestly, I don't think I had targets at the time. I just got hot the second day. It was a fairly short course. They were shot up a bit, and I shot 26 up the second day. I shot 10 up and 26 up, and then the shoot-off got windy, and I whooped them. And it was funny because I remember hearing guys say, he got lucky and this and that. And I'm thinking, you people have no idea the mountain I've climbed. It took me 20 years to win my first pro tournament. I literally won every single shoot-off that I made for like 7 in a row. And this young cat named Levi Morgan showed up.
Oh,
And I remember when I was in Alaska reading his name in the books when I was a kid, like, man, that guy used to win everything, when he's a kid. Well, I figured I better get him on staff real quick. He shot for us a lot of years, and we had a lot of good battles, a lot of good battles, He won more than I did.
Yeah. Well, tell people. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Tim. I was just going to say, probably some of your innovation though is your front stabilizer mounts. What year did you come up with that? I mean, if you and Levi were battling back then, did you have visions of that back then? Or
I won the SA Classic on 1 year with B bars front and B bars back, short ones. I didn't know. I honestly at this point, 23 years in, didn't know jack about stabilization until Blair Sandberg and Greg Poole come over the house with these bee stingers, and I honestly still was kind of like, whatever, it ain't gonna make a difference. And it was just dramatic. From that point forward, stabilization is probably one of the biggest keys to holding well. It really is. It's once you understand the ratio of holding weight versus mass weight versus learning how to tweak that. Sometimes my best round ever in ASA as a known pro, I shot 17 out of 20 12s at Foley. And I come off the team shoot, and I didn't shoot very good. I shot 6 or 7 12s or 14s. I can't remember what we were doing back then, but I just wasn't aiming good. I just couldn't get the dang thing. I put 1 ounce on my front bar, went over to the 10 target Sims course, and I missed the 50-yarder by just a whisker and cleaned it. I knew it was on then. I went out the next day. I had so much pin control. I mean, that movement was just soft and slow and controlled. And I hit 17 out of 20. And the next day I went out and hit 8 out of the first 9. The wind picked up, and I just didn't manage the wind very well. I had a huge lead, and I should have just. The problem is the wind was wrong. Most ironic thing ever. Every single freaking target after that 9th target, the target was facing the wrong direction for the wind. If it was on the one side of the course, it was the other way. And on the other side, they were all facing the wrong way for me to shoot at the upper. And I got burned a few times, and
Yeah.
because it was, this much wind drift style wind, But
Oh yeah. So your front stabilizer mount now that you're shooting.
I saw old Lynn Hoke has one. Hoke has one now. It's funny to see, a lot of stuff I come up with has just become mainstream, and I don't necessarily get credit for it. Like how people tie their peeps in and paper tuning and all this different stuff that that I obsessed with for years. And
well, explain that setup a little bit so people understand and know what we're talking about, and tell what you see
on the stabilizer,
what you notice with it.
Stabilizer.
Yeah. Because you have a front. Is that a 12
because
inch
a lot of these guys
on the front that you're running now?
I always ask people why they do things. I asked Brady on the Olympic team, hey, why do people shoot extensions? It doesn't make any sense to me. It just feels so goofy and off balanced. And he said they just do it because that's the way they've been doing it forever. And I think that's a lot of it. People are sheep. They just follow the herd. Most people don't have any genuinely unique ideas. And it just drove me crazy to have to avoid that back bar. So whenever I got enough weight on it, I liked it. It was always real close to the bow, and I could never get into my grip the way I wanted to relaxed, right? And you always have to prop it up on your belly, and I didn't like it. So I went to V-bars. But V-bars never seemed like, it almost seemed like everything's at this central pivot point, and it just always wants to, move really fast, So I thought, well, what if I bring the bars out here along the side, and it's more like this, rather than, it's all about keeping a wider fulcrum. So if you can split your 2 bars, your back and your front bars, instead of them all being here, they're going to rotate real fast. If you can split them here, this fulcrum here has to rotate, right? So it's a slower fulcrum. Well, the same principle applies, but the main reason is I wanted to be able to get into the bow. When you're shooting downhill and you got a tight back bar, you have to avoid that bar. It's going to cause you some major problems. And I saw that early on with guys, and when we were shooting the European Pro Series, and we were shooting these real steep shots, they were struggling big time, especially guys like I start with Parker Baker last weekend. He's got 40 ounces on his back bar. Good indoor shooter. He couldn't hold a 2-inch line at 15 yards shooting 30 degrees downhill because he was trying to avoid that weight and had no leverage over it. Okay. And so when we finally got the weight down on his back bar, then he started to be able to pipe that line. So, work standing there at 20 yards just, isn't necessarily going to work, for up and downhill. You got to have a little bit more balance set up for up and downhill, I think. So, the 2-bar system out front, I still play with. I shot that actually last weekend, the first day. I don't know. I may go back to it now. I'm still playing. What that 2-bar system did is I was getting this kind of like a real fast jog to the left. And when I put that bar on there, I was getting ready for Lancaster. And that was happening to me. I thought, you know what? That's exactly what happened the first time I tried this. And I won Lancaster with it, is I was seeing that same exact thing. So I threw it on there real quick. And having the bar made the way I did it, the first time I did it, I was able to just go in and drill and tap those 2 screws for a stabilizer on there. And it's just an option. I've actually tried them to where I put the back bar here and then offset this. So these 2 bars are wider apart so I can still get into them in a 1-bar system. But then I felt like when I was in the wind with that, it was just really like doing this kind of crap. It wasn't really didn't come back to center fast enough. So, but that was actually a decent feeling setup too, because then it, by leveraging it out, it gets you away from it, right? So, but it's just just an effort to get in behind the bow and to create higher moments of inertia. Okay, moments of inertia is how much force it takes to move that riser in the middle. Yeah. That's what's going to slow down your motion, slow down your mistakes, those kinds of things. And then antithesis of that, you get guys like Jimmy Lutz. He's shooting 80% mods, but that's one of the reasons he has to shoot light stabilizers. If you don't have any holding weights, you can't shoot heavy bars. But no, I don't have.
Have you got one of them sitting there, Tim, or do you?
I mount them a bunch of different ways. If you look at my hunting bow, I like this offset counterslide system. Okay. And the reason I like it is because it offsets the weight of the quiver, okay? And if you look at this, and everybody poo-poos quivers and stuff, but this is all stabilization value. Weight is all stabilization value. See, I got 460 grain arrows, 6 of them. That's weight, okay? Okay? And I got quite a bit of weight on here for a hunting bow. I mean, it always baffles me that guys that climb up trees care about weight. Makes no difference. I pack this thing around sheep hunting because at the moment of truth, the value of that weight is there. Okay. And I don't think anything from a hunting standpoint is as good as this counterslide system. There's just nothing in my. Plus, when I hunt, like that. It's nice to carry the bow sometimes like this. Or, I'll carry it like this, or you could even put a hook here, to carry it. Some of that, hook, hunting's just a concession, right? You're making stabilization, but you also need portability and weight to it.
Yeah. Well, this is the bar that exactly we're talking about, so people
it's
can
similar.
See. Well, there
you can't screw quad bars into that.
Yeah, and then. No. And then, this is how they mount up. We're talking about how they mount up.
It's just a wider
just to
V-bar
give people
system,
a visualization of what we're really talking about. Yeah.
Oh, there's no doubt.
You feel it slows your pin down?
I run 15-inch or 20-inch back bars off of it. Because once you get them away from your body, it really doesn't matter how long they are. You can run 30s. I've ran 30s before. Dude. Yeah, you just talk about slow. It's just
you did do that, yes.
To pack around, that's the hard part. Is it?
Yeah.
What does your bow weigh? Any idea?
9.5 pounds.
That's less than Doug.
See, his is lighter than mine.
Sarah,
mine weighs almost 13 pounds.
Holgren or something like that. The NASA, her bow's like 12.5 pounds. My bow's nowhere near that. But I like it long. Okay, so I have a 33-inch front bar on, 15-inch back bar. So I only have 8 ounces on my front bar, and I think I have 8 and 9 on my back bar. So I don't have a lot. It's just out on the perimeter where it's actually doing something.
What's your draw length?
So going to the long bar, did you get to take weight off of your back bars when you went to the wider stance?
Most of that's just holding weight versus
stabilization.
If you're pulling 22 pounds of holding weights, you need more resistance. And then you base the front weight the front weight on your 33-inch bar is going to have more of an effect. The back weight's more of a rudder, right? Think of it as a rudder. Okay, so when this long bar moves out front, you got to have a counteracting force in the rear that slows it down and gets it back in line. So I like as long a bar as I could possibly shoot and be comfortable with how fast it recovers back to the middle. And that's the importance of stiff bars. A bar like a Premier Plus is my favorite. A lot of guys get attracted to these skinny bars, but they have no value. There's no real value in the wind. People think it helps them more than it actually does. Your body surface area, your bow surface area is 98% of the equation in terms of how much the wind's going to affect you. Your arm stick, they're 30 times wider than your stabilizer bar.
Yeah.
The difference between a skinny bar and a 3/4-inch bar ain't going to make 2 shakes of difference. But I had one bow in my
Yeah, I'm
career. I
back to
shot a
shooting the
36
Premier
a little bit
Pluses
last year.
this
I had
year.
one bow in my career that I shot a 36 really well with, and I need to revisit that for like target archery, like Redding, where you're just trying to hold in the middle of a dot. Sometimes a longer bar is actually better for that. And so, if a solution I give people, if you buy a 30-inch bar, which is the most popular, is we sell extensions. So you could get a 3-inch extension, you could get a couple 1-inch. Um, you could just get the 1-inch extensions and stack them on each other to experiment with what you actually prefer. 1 inch can make a big difference sometimes. So,
Yeah, it doesn't take much, but I don't know. But you got anything else, Steve?
No, Tim, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. We've had you on for an hour and a half. Really appreciate your time, but definitely give yourself and all your business activities a plug on all your social media
yeah, it's
where
just
people
kind
can
of
reach
like
out
I
to you
said,
at.
it's the air rifle fund right now. So if I get real serious about it, that's just crazy work. So I pack it around with me, and I like to help people out, but makes a little money for me on the side, and I just and it's kind of a backup plan if I ever need it. Gold tip. I've been here 23, 24 years. They're selling right now, so we'll see where it ends up. I think it's going to end up in a better place. So looking forward to all the work it's going to take to do that. So it's I'm the Lone Ranger now. So these corporate companies,
Yeah, that's interesting.
sometimes buy these companies up and have lots of good intentions, and they don't ever seem to work out. So um, you know, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I think either way it goes, I think we're going to be in a good spot.
Yep. Yep. Well, Tim, I just want to thank you for taking the time out of your day. I know you're a busy guy, and you always take the time to do these things, and I know Steve and I really appreciate it. It's been great to have you on, and hopefully people get a few things. If they just take one thing away, then we've
One of the
accomplished
reasons,
our goal.
one of the reasons I do videos is because I
getting them
realized a long time ago I go to a seminar with 30 people and charge them $250, per seminar, even 2 days. And the amount of stuff that they will retain is fairly negligible. But if you could do the videos, like once I get a really good 500 video library, then it makes a lot of sense to go out and do seminars, because now you can use the video referral, I learn the same way. If I want to learn reloading, I do it once a year, so I never remember everything. So I have to go back and revisit these videos that taught me how to do it. And I think people are the same. Look at how long it took me to learn,
Oh, absolutely.
the paper tune charts and things like that. Now it's second nature. It's just, it's simple. So these new bows make it a lot easier too. Some of them. So
yeah, it's definitely the technology has definitely changed a lot in those. Um, some for good, some for worse, and be interesting to see what manufacturers come up with.
That's a tough
in
job,
the future.
man. Trying to come up with something new for people to buy that
So,
is supposedly better than the perfect bow you made last time, right? So
right. Yeah. Yep. Most definitely. Yeah.
Well, Tim, we appreciate you.
Well, thanks again, Tim.
Thanks for
It's
having
been
me.
great. Been fantastic.
If anybody's got any questions, if anybody's got any questions for us, reach out at wildarrowod@gmail.com. And Tim, we thank you
They
again,
could.
and we will see you at Minden next week. Bring your
Don't tell
raincoat
me
because
that.
the weather's not looking great. Oh, it looks like 60 to 70% chance of storms up today.
Steve's already showed me
Your
the
viewers
weather,
can follow
so I
me
was
on
not
Instagram
excited.
at Gillingham.tim, or I don't know what I am on. I got a Hammer Archer, I think, Facebook pages, so the other one's full. But if you want to answer, you want to ask me questions or anything, or inquire on any products, you can. I usually answer those really well. So sometimes I find a whole list
You're a wealth of
of
knowledge. We appreciate you.
inquiries that I didn't. I think they hide this stuff from us, so they change the platform every month just to mess with old people. And my dog, I mean, like, what's wrong with you?
Agreed.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
All right.
all
Good
right,
luck
sounds
to
good.
you, and we
Good.
will see you at Menden.
All right, we'll see you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks again, Tim.